A professional services firm enters its quarterly business review with a margin model that looks unusually attractive. Generative AI has reduced the junior and mid-level hours required for routine analysis, compliance preparation, and client documentation. If billing rates hold, the model appears to move the firm closer to software-like gross margins. The capital question is whether that margin gap is actually closing, or whether AI only relocates service costs into less visible layers. This projection assumes the labor hours saved translate directly into margin expansion. Under US quarterly pressures, where services firms are measured on utilization and partner economics, while public software companies face scrutiny on gross margin expansion, the assumption shapes both internal targets and external guidance. The assumption meets immediate friction. In competitive US procurement, clients now treat AI capability as baseline and negotiate fees with that efficiency already priced in. Legacy client environments still require custom data handling and process adaptation that current tools do not fully absorb. In regulated sectors, professional sign-off and exception handling remain mandatory. AI reduces the delivery burden. It does not guarantee the firm captures the margin. To isolate the structural distinction, consider this relationship sketch of cost composition. Two vertical bars represent revenue. In the service panel, a large lower block occupies most of the height for direct delivery costs driven by skilled labor. Only a narrow upper band remains for contribution margin. In the software panel, the lower block is thin for distribution and infrastructure. The upper band for contribution margin is thick. With AI, the service bar gains a mid-layer for coordination, validation, and client adaptation. The software bar gains a lower to mid-band for inference and model maintenance that grows with usage. The sketch shows AI modifies each cost structure without collapsing one into the other. The service model generates revenue through project or time and materials arrangements. Its primary direct cost is compensated professional time. AI substitutes for defined portions of repeatable work. The margin improvement holds only if hours shifted to AI exceed the added time for prompt design, validation, and exception escalation. It also holds only if realized billing rates do not decline with perceived efficiency and if remaining capacity sustains utilization high enough to cover fixed overhead. Under quarterly pressure, these conditions are tested when non-standard work or competitive rate concessions appear. The margin gain is not the labor saved. It is the labor saved after validation, customization, and price concessions. The software model generates revenue through subscriptions with low direct cost per additional customer once core development exists. AI accelerates coding and iteration, lowering fixed cost to reach feature sets. The margin benefit appears as reduced R&D intensity relative to revenue. This benefit narrows when inference costs scale with usage, when fine-tuning becomes necessary to maintain quality, and when competitive parity shortens the premium pricing window. Public software companies under earnings scrutiny often observe that sustaining AI capability requires capital commitments whose ongoing cost offsets part of the development savings. Software gains leverage from reuse. AI adds a usage-linked cost to that reuse. A first clarification follows. AI improves margins in both models through mechanisms tied to each original cost architecture. In services, gains are utilization-driven and sensitive to billable demand drops or client demands to share efficiency through lower fees. In software, gains are operating leverage-driven and sensitive to variable infrastructure growth and differentiation erosion. The net effect depends on whether the new cost layer stays smaller than the one displaced and on pricing durability under competitive response. In US market practice, service firms track utilization, project contribution margin, and AI-augmented versus fully human workshare. Expansion registers clearest when repeatable offerings are repriced on product or outcome basis. Software firms track gross margin by stream and infrastructure cost as revenue percentage. Pressure appears when accelerated releases fail to support price increases or when lower margin implementation services grow as a share of total revenue. A second clarification addresses boundary conditions. The margin distinction narrows when a service firm productizes a repeatable module, prices it on subscription, and delivers it with limited customization. That module then exhibits cost behavior closer to the software panel. The transition itself introduces software-like capital requirements for maintenance. Conversely, a software firm whose revenue shifts toward heavy implementation sees overall margins pulled towards service economics on that portion. The blended result reflects the weighted average of the two compositions. The distinction narrows, but it does not disappear. AI changes where each model carries cost and introduces new points of fragility. Service margins expand where work is codifiable, clients accept AI-augmented delivery at stable rates, and exception volume stays predictable. Outside those conditions, irreducible human oversight and client-specific adaptation preserve a cost structure closer to traditional services. When inference workloads grow faster than pricing power or rivals match capabilities, realized software margins settle below the level implied by development cost reduction alone. Organizations surface these boundaries through project-level margin tracking, pre- and post-adoption and win rate data from bids that now score automation. Where conditions weaken, the initial projection requires recalibration against actual P and L outcomes. The margin gap narrows only where service delivery becomes repeatable enough to productize, and software delivery avoids usage-linked cost escalation that outruns pricing power. Returning to the cost composition sketch, the service panel shows a variable cost block that contracts with AI substitution, yet retains a material human coordination and exception layer. The software panel shows a direct cost block that remains thin, yet acquires a usage-linked component absent from traditional models. Neither panel converts into the other under realistic US market operating conditions. The margin structures adapt along separate trajectories, bounded by their own cost composition and by the pricing conditions each market will sustain.